I found out the hard way that helping family doesn't mean they'll help you back. I'm Darren, 59 now. I live in outside Cleveland, Ohio. This started about 11 years ago, when I thought I was doing the right thing. Back then, I'd been working in the restaurant game for over 20 years. Started in kitchens, busted my ass, learned every station, then moved into ops and training. Wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I liked getting things to run clean. I liked building teams that didn't want to murder each other by Friday. One Thanksgiving, my mom pulled me aside and said Nora, my older sister, needed help. She had a 2-bedroom condo she didn't want to sell, but couldn't afford to keep. My folks called it a family thing. Said it was important to do right by each other. I figured they meant I'd be paying a little under market, maybe fixing a few things here and there. But then Nora sat me down with this fake, sweet voice and said she needed me to cover her mortgage, plus a little more so she could get back on her feet. Market rent in that area was about $1,050 a month. She wanted $1,350. That was above what nicer places nearby were going for. But I said yes, she was my sister. I figured it was temporary. That's what family does, right? First couple months, I stayed quiet. Then I started fixing things. New fridge, better stove, put up some shelving. Just basics to make the place work. I didn't ask permission, I just paid for it. She never offered to split costs, no one did. But at holidays they'd walk through and say, "Wow, looks nice in here," then change the subject the second I brought up a win at work. I trained 5 new managers in 1 quarter, once, nothing. But when Nora needed money for car repairs, guess who got a phone call? When my niece needed help with community college fees, I sent it. When my dad's alternator blew out, I covered it, no questions asked. I never held a ledger. I wasn't trying to keep score, but I figured deep down they'd remember. Not just the money, the showing up, the part where I didn't flinch when they asked for help. I never expected applause, but I expected not to be invisible. And yet, somehow, I already was. I'd been in that condo for about 5 years when Nora called me over one Sunday. Nothing weird about that. She made some lasagna, Evan was fiddling with the TV, and Lila, barely a year old, was napping in one of those over-padded bouncer things. About halfway through dinner, Nora puts her fork down like she's easing into something serious. Evan leans forward like he's in on it. She goes, "So, we've been doing the math, and with baby stuff, daycare coming, and everything going up, we're gonna need to bump the rent a little, just to stay afloat." I said, "All right, what are you thinking?" Evan jumps in. $1,850. It's not even high for this neighborhood now. He said it like I was supposed to feel lucky. Nora added, "Honestly, we figured you might have already offered." That part stung, like I was behind on some family duty I didn't sign up for. I looked between them. I wanted to say, "Are you serious?" But instead, I nodded. "All right," I said. "I'll make it work." I told myself it was just for a little while, that maybe things were tight for them, and if I helped now, it'd pay off later. But I already knew how that played out. I didn't stop paying, though. I made it work. I always did. What they didn't know was that I'd been saving for something real, small deposits, every month. I'd been planning a place of my own for years. Nothing flashy. Just a tight-run neighborhood spot. Burgers, hot sandwiches, grilled stuff, chili. Delivery-focused. Fast systems, reliable prep, nothing complicated. I had binders full of stuff. Supply chain plans, staff training outlines, POS system comparisons. I'd worked in these joints long enough to know what wasted time and what actually worked. By the time Nora hit me with that rent hike, I'd saved $164,000, all clean, no loans. I kept a spreadsheet tracking every dollar and a Google map with pins dropped on high-foot traffic corners with solid parking, near laundromats, clinics, office parks, anywhere people got hungry and didn't want to wait. But back at that condo, none of it mattered. I got promoted again that fall, regional ops coordinator, oversaw 7 stores, took 15 years to get there. I mentioned it at dinner, told them how I reworked 2 training programs and cut turnover in half. My mom said, "That's nice, honey," and asked if I could help cover Lila's new daycare spot. Evan said nothing. Nora changed the subject to her friend's beach wedding. But the second their car battery died 2 weeks later, they remembered my number. I wasn't shocked anymore. I just kept my mouth shut and paid the invoice. One time, I joked to Nora that I should charge them interest. She didn't laugh. She just gave me that flat stare and said, "You're doing fine, Darren. You don't need it." That was their line every time. I didn't need it, because I didn't complain, because I wasn't the one crying broke or flashing bills. And maybe that was my mistake. I didn't make noise. I just paid, and they kept asking. 2 months after the rent hike, Glenn called a meeting, said he was stepping back after 21 years as director of ops. I knew it was coming. He was tired. His wife had health issues and he'd been floating it for a while. Glenn wasn't flashy, but he knew the game. He taught me half of what I knew: how to stretch food costs without cutting corners, how to read people fast, how to spot the one guy on a shift who was quietly holding it all together. So, yeah, I figured I had a real shot. I'd been running day-to-day for months. I handled staffing, vendor calls, crisis shifts, new openings. Hell, Glenn hadn't been inside a kitchen in weeks unless it was to shake a hand. Then Tyler showed up. 24. Glenn's son. Fresh out of some management program with a name that sounded like a crypto startup. First day, Tyler walked into the district meeting in tight pants, flashy sneakers, and a tablet like it was a badge. Stood in front of guys who'd been in the trenches for 20 years and said we needed to disrupt the hospitality space and move with the speed of innovation. I looked at Vince. He'd been with us longer than me, and his eyes said the same thing mine did. This kid doesn't know shit. Day 2, Tyler calls me into his temporary office. Glass walls, standing desk, stupid neon sign that said grind mode. He smiles and says, "I know you've been running things during the transition, and I respect that, but I'm building something new here. I need people who move faster, think newer. We can't get stuck in old restaurant logic." I asked, "Are you saying I'm stuck?" He goes, "I'm saying this company is evolving. You're from another era, Darren. I need a team that speaks my language." Right then I knew. He didn't want me around. I said, "So what exactly are you telling me?" He said he'd already picked my replacement, some buddy from his program named Jordan. Smart guy, you'll like him. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at him and asked, "When's this change happening?" He gave me 10 days, said I needed to hand off everything: contacts, vendor lists, scheduling templates, the training programs I built from scratch. 10 days to erase myself from a system I'd spent years tightening up. I walked out of his office and went straight to my car. Sat there, hands on the wheel, engine off. Thought about every late night I'd spent covering no-shows, every week I'd driven 600 miles just to keep a crew upright. Then I called Glenn. I said, "You handed the whole thing to your kid?" He sighed and said, "Tyler's got fresh ideas. Maybe it's time we shake things up." I said, "He's replacing me with a friend of his who's never run a lunch rush." Glenn said, "He's young. Give him a chance." I wanted to ask if he was even listening. Instead, I just said, "Got it." Next morning, I showed up on time, clipboard in hand. I didn't argue, didn't drag my feet. I started pulling my documents, tightening handoff notes, cleaning systems so no one could say I left a mess. Tyler tried to buddy up a few times, asked if I could mentor Jordan during the transition. I said, "I'll give him what he needs to do the job. That's it." He smiled like it was a win, like pushing people out with a handshake made it clean. 12 days. That's what they gave me. I used every one of them to document everything I built. After my last day, I took 2 days off. Didn't look for work. Didn't open my laptop. I ordered pizza twice, left the boxes on the counter, and sat on the couch like my body needed to catch up to what just happened. Losing a job you gave years to doesn't come all at once. It hits in waves. By Saturday, my parents had already called about dinner. Same routine, same table, same fake normal. I drove over with that tight feeling in my chest, telling myself this was family, that if anywhere was safe, it was there. We sat down. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. My mom fussed with napkins. My dad poured iced tea like it was a regular weekend. Nora and Evan were already there with Lila in her high chair, banging a spoon. Halfway through the meal, I said it, kept my voice level. I got pushed out at work. Nobody asked how. Nobody asked if I was okay. My dad, Keith, wiped his mouth and said, "You still going to be able to help us here and there?" That landed hard. Not concern, just logistics. My mom, Marjorie, leaned in and said, "And what's the plan with the condo?" I blinked, said, "I'm figuring things out." Nora didn't miss a beat. She put her fork down and said, Well, if you're between jobs, the condo isn't a shelter. I looked at her. What does that mean? She said, it means your rent's changing, 5,400, starting now. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because it was insane. That's not rent, I said. That's punishment. She shrugged. Take it or move. Evan stayed quiet, staring at his plate. Lila kept banging the spoon. I said, you know I've paid above market for years. Nora leaned back and crossed her arms. You've had it easy, living cheap, no kids, good job. You've been draining us. That's when she said it, calm, flat. You're a parasite, Darren. The words sat there on the table between the gravy and the salt shaker. I waited for someone to shut it down, for my mom to say that wasn't okay, for my dad to say she'd gone too far. My dad cleared his throat and said, she's just being honest. My mom nodded. Families have to make hard choices. I felt something go quiet inside me, like a switch flipped. I said, you're giving me 2 days? Nora nodded. I already checked. That's generous. I didn't raise my voice, didn't swear. I pushed my chair back and stood up. All right, I said. I'll be gone. My mom said my name like she wanted to soften it, but she didn't stand up. Nobody did. I walked to the door, put on my jacket, and left my plate half full. I didn't hug anyone. Didn't look back. I drove home in silence, parked, and sat there for a minute. Then I went inside and started pulling boxes out of the closet. The next morning, I didn't waste time. I woke up early, grabbed coffee, and opened the folder I'd kept in the hall drawer for years. Every receipt was there. Fridge, stove, table, bed, shelves, light fixtures. I'd kept them without thinking much about it. Turns out I'd been preparing for this. I started with the kitchen, unplugged the fridge, drained it, wiped it down. Same with the stove. I worked steady, not fast, not slow. No shaking hands, no yelling, just methodical. By noon, the place already looked smaller. My phone started lighting up around 1. Nora, missed call, then another, then texts. What are you doing? You can't take that? You're stealing my things, I texted back once. Paid for it, my money, my stuff. She called again. I let it ring. Evan texted next, said I was being dramatic, said we could talk this out. I didn't reply. Talking was over. I pulled the table apart, wrapped the legs, stacked them by the door, took down the shelves I'd installed, patched the holes with cheap filler, same way the place looked when I moved in. Bare walls, cheap carpet, no upgrades left behind. By late afternoon, a buddy from work showed up with his pickup. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and helped to load. 2 runs across town to a storage unit I'd already rented. Roll-up door, clean concrete, bright lights. I stacked everything tight and neat, locked it up, put the key on my ring. When we got back, the condo echoed. No bed, no lamps, no warmth. Exactly how I'd found it years ago. I took one last look around, shut the door, and slid the keys through Nora's mail slot. Didn't knock, didn't leave a note. That night, I slept on an air mattress at a cheap motel off the highway. Not great, not terrible, quiet. 2 days later, I signed a lease on a small 1-bedroom across town. $12.80 a month, clean, fresh paint, decent neighbors who nodded but didn't pry. I moved in with what I needed and left the rest in storage. The first night there, I stood in the middle of the living room and let the quiet settle. No footsteps above me, no tension humming through the walls. It felt like breathing after holding it in too long. I blocked Nora first, then Evan, then my parents. No speech, no warning, just blocked. The silence felt earned. I sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop, opened my savings spreadsheet, and stared at the number. 164,000, still there, untouched. Alongside it were my notes, maps, and drafts for the place I'd been planning for years. For the first time in a long while, no one had their hand out. No one telling me what I owed them. That night, I slept hard. The next morning, I woke up early, grabbed coffee, and got in my car. I drove slow through neighborhoods I'd marked before, watched foot traffic, counted parking spots, noted which corners stayed busy past lunch. I pulled city maps on my phone, checked permit boards taped to windows, and kept driving. I wasn't asking anyone anymore. Took me 6 days of driving before I found the spot. It was tucked behind a laundromat on East 39th, sandwiched between a dentist's office and a discount cell phone store. 2 office buildings across the street, plus a big apartment complex 1 block over. Foot traffic wasn't constant, but it was steady, mornings and lunch rush mostly. And parking, plenty of it. The place was a wreck. Ceiling tiles warped from old water damage. Exposed wiring, panels so outdated it buzzed when the lights flicked on. But the bones were there. Decent layout, venting already in. Enough space for a small line, a cold prep station, and a few two-tops for anyone eating in. Rent was dirt cheap. I signed the lease that same week. I hired a licensed electrician and a plumber I'd worked with before. Guys who wouldn't screw me on timelines. While they handled code work, I ripped out the old linoleum myself. Patched drywall, painted walls, built new shelving. My arms ached by the end of every day, but it felt good. Like I was building something that couldn't be taken. Once the basics were in, I made calls. Royce was first, a grill guy I'd trained back in Toledo. Fast hands, no ego, solid under pressure. Then Cara and Min, 2 servers I knew from my district days. They never no-showed, never brought drama, handled lunch rush like pros. Last was Shane, a delivery driver who knew every back road and side street in the area. Drove like a machine and showed up early. I didn't need a fleet. I needed one guy who got the job done. The menu stayed tight on purpose. Smash burgers, grilled chicken, 2 hot sandwiches, chili, 2 salads, and a rotating pasta that changed every few weeks. No fluff, no deep fryer. Everything could be prepped fast, packed clean, and sent out hot. I knew how kitchens fell apart. Too much variety, too many moving parts. People trying to elevate things that didn't need elevating. This wasn't about flair. It was about speed, quality, and consistency. I handled the permits myself. I'd done it so many times I could have filled out the health inspection blindfolded. I got the food license, fire suppression check, and kitchen sign-off done in under 3 weeks. No drama. Just follow the steps, answer the questions, hand them a clean clipboard. Before opening, I built the online ordering system myself, linked it straight to a tablet by the line, set up delivery zones and prepped routes with Shane. Every neighborhood had an estimated time window. Day 1 was quiet, no flyers, no ads. Just unlocked the doors and told the crew, stay steady, hit times, fix mistakes without excuses. Everything else takes care of itself. They nodded and got to work. We started slow, maybe 15, 20 tickets a day the first week. Some dine-in, mostly takeout. A lot of folks from the office buildings. Word got around fast. By month 2, we were doubling our numbers. By month 5, we were pulling a clean profit. By month 8, it doubled. I took a small draw, just enough to live. The rest went straight back into gear upgrades, emergency cushion, and basic local marketing. I sponsored a little league team, printed menus for apartment complexes, and ran a 3-day free delivery promo on first orders. Everything we did stayed small, controlled, tight. No fluff, no gimmicks. Just food that showed up fast and hot, served by people who gave a damn. And it worked. About a year in, the phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go, but something told me to answer. Darren, it's your mother. Her voice was soft, careful, like she wasn't sure how this was gonna go. She said, we heard you have a place now, a restaurant. We're proud of you. That pause, that little breath between we're proud and the rest, I knew it was coming. She said Evan got laid off. The new tenants in Nora's condo weren't paying enough, $1,500 a month apparently, and now things were tight. She said, we were hoping you could step in again, just for a bit, like before. I didn't yell, I didn't snap, I just said, no. Silence on the other end, then she said it. Well, I guess you're just selfish now. I hung up, blocked the number, didn't lose a minute of sleep. A week later, I was mid-lunch rush. Kara was at the register, Min was wiping tables, Shane had just come back from a run. I was working the expo line, double-checking bag orders before they went out. Burgers, chili, chicken sandwich, 3 sodas. Door opens. I glance up. My heart dropped. Not because I was scared, but because I knew it was about to be a show. My parents, Nora, Evan, and Lila walking in holding her mom's hand like this was some damn Sunday outing. They walked right past the other tables and sat down at one of the 4 tops near the front, like they owned the place. Kara looked at me, eyebrows raised. I gave her a nod. Let it play. Then Nora raised her hand, loud and proud. We'd like to speak to the owner. A few people turned to look. A couple regulars frowned. I walked over, wiped my hands on a towel, stood by the table. Nora smiled like this was a reunion. So, she said, we've had a rough year. Evan's out of work, Lila's growing fast, and with rent not coming in, we're really stretched. I said nothing, just looked at her. So, she went on, we'd like you to feed us, for free, just today. Maybe for a little while, until we get back on our feet. She said it loud, on purpose. I leaned in just enough for only them to hear. This is a restaurant, not a pantry. Evan chuckled. Come on, man, don't be like that. We'll come every day until you help. That was it. I nodded once, turned to Kara. Call security. Nora stood up fast. Are you serious? I didn't answer. 2 mall security guards showed up inside 5 minutes. Big guys, calm. Asked them to step outside. My dad started protesting. My mom said something about, this is family, but it didn't matter. They were walked out, quiet but fuming. I had them trespass that same hour. Kara comped the 2 tables that got interrupted. Min offered to cover their drinks. I told him I already had. Shane asked if I was okay. I nodded. Then I went back to the expo window and started checking orders. Burgers still had to go out. People still needed lunch. I wasn't feeding guilt. I was feeding customers. We stayed busy, kept the system tight, didn't overreach, didn't play flashy. The first shop held steady. Crew stayed loyal. Customers came back. 2 winters later, I started hearing the rumblings. One of my produce reps, a guy named Curtis, said, You hear what's happening with your old spot? Tyler's bleeding them out. I raised an eyebrow. That right? He nodded. New age this, new age that. No one can get a straight answer on payments. Burned 3 vendors already. I didn't say much, just listened. Over the next few months, I heard more. Tyler had swapped out half the veteran staff for people who'd never handled a slammed kitchen. He blew cash on branded furniture, fancy menu boards that glitched, software systems nobody understood. Meanwhile, food quality dipped, turnover shot up, and regulars stopped showing. He forgot the basics: hot food, clean floors, strong hands on the line. Late last year, the company folded, quietly, no headlines. Assets got listed in batches, lease positions, equipment, some naming rights. I kept my eye on one location, the one I knew best. Not the biggest, not the flashiest, but it had bones. I'd run that kitchen blindfolded. I ran the numbers 3 times, checked my cushion, called a friend who still worked commercial real estate, and made a conservative offer. No fluff, straight cash. A month later, it was mine. Equipment, walk-in fridge, griddle line, flat top, lease position locked for another 6 years with low escalation. They didn't even bother cleaning it out. I renamed it Full Bench Grill. Simple, solid. Pulled a few things from the first shop. Same systems, same tight menu with a couple tweaks for space. Then I made calls. First one was to Vince. Hadn't spoken in over a year. He answered like no time passed. You running it? He asked. Yeah. You calling shots? Everyone. Then I'm in. Next was Tina, old front house lead. Then Anthony, one of the best prep guys I'd ever met. All of them had been there when things worked. All of them had gotten chewed up when Tyler took over. I told them hours pay and that I wasn't running a circus, just a real place again. Their faces when they walked in opening week said everything. Anthony ran his hand along the new counter I'd put in. Smells like bleach and redemption in here? Tina laughed and hugged me. Thought I was done with restaurants. Guess not. Even a couple of my old line cooks, quiet guys, real steady, got misty when they walked the back line. They saw I'd kept the workstations the same, just cleaner. We opened on a Tuesday. No balloons, no ads. Just flipped the sign to open and unlocked the door. First 2 hours were slow. Then an older couple walked in, scanned the room, and froze. The husband whispered, "Didn't this place shut down?" I said, "It did. We brought it back. New name, better hands." They ordered burgers, sat by the window. Before they left, he came up and said, "Feels like the old days, but sharper." I smiled and thanked him. Then I checked the fryer temps, straightened the ticket rail, and kept moving. No speeches, no revenge tour, just a clean shop, a real crew, and a second chance done right. People ask if I ever patched things up with my family. No, I kept them blocked. No drama, no big speech. Just a line I didn't cross again. A couple months after we opened Full Bench Grill, Nora started trying to get messages to me through mutuals. One came from a guy I used to work with. Another from a cousin I barely talked to. She says you've changed, one said. She wants you to remember what family means. Yeah, I remember. I remember being called a parasite. I remember being told I had 2 days to get out of a place I paid for and fixed up. That's what I remember. I don't care what guilt angle she's working now. The door's closed. Business stays steady. Both shops pull clean numbers. I don't push growth just to brag about it. I'm not chasing empire. I want clean tickets, fair schedules, and a crew that clocks out without hating me. Royce runs the line like it's his own house. Min just trained 2 new servers without being asked. Shane still drives like he's running from the cops, but he's never late. We get compliments, repeat orders, word of mouth that actually sticks. Every once in a while, someone brings up Tyler. Last I heard, he moved out of state after the company collapsed. Got into consulting or something equally vague. I don't cheer about it. I don't spit on his name. I just remember the fake buzzwords, the gutting of real systems, and how fast it all crumbled once the people who did the work got cut out. My revenge, if that's what you want to call it, is simple. I own what I built. No one can take it. I banned the people who tried to humiliate me in front of customers. I bought the place that tossed me out and made it run the right way. No yelling, no firestorm, just discipline, stubbornness, and work. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier. The one-sided favors, the silence around my wins, the way family only came up when someone needed something. But I know now. The first night I locked up that second shop, my old one, I stood there alone in the dark, hand on the key, and laughed, just once. Then I went home and slept like a rock. Would you have let your family back in or done the same? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit like and subscribe for more stories like this one.